acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we meet and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. Reverend Fathers, representatives of the New South Wales Parliament, friends of the Armenian, Greek and Assyrian communities. The story wasn't supposed to go this way. We are not supposed to be here. We are supposed to be a forgotten memory. We are supposed to be a story no longer told, a people who no longer walk this earth. We are not supposed to be in the far corners of this earth remembering. We are not supposed to be raising their voices. We are not supposed to be here. That's just not how it was supposed to go. We know this story too well. In 1915 and the years that followed, the Ottoman Turkish government began a program of annihilation, a program of genocide, a systematic extermination of the Armenian, Assyrian and Pontian Greeks of the Ottoman Empire. They tried to bury us. They did not know we were seeds. They could not have imagined 104 years later that children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren of survivors of the Armenian Genocide would be the living, breathing witnesses they feared so much. They could not have known that our ancestors' memories would not lie silent, that generations of descendants around the world would never allow their memory to be forgotten or their truths to be distorted. They could not have known that we build communities rich with our culture and hearts and minds full of the images and the stories of the horrors our ancestors endured. They could not have known that we would march today and we would demand justice for those we lost, for those who never were, for our loved ones who survived so that we could be here today. They could not have known any of this because their plan was to make sure that none of us made it out alive. But we did. And in the last 104 years, so much has changed. We have a free and independent Armenia. An Armenia that continues to grow with a democracy that every day becomes stronger. We also have a free and independent Artsakh and the determination to ensure the people of Artsakh maintain their right to self-determination free of persecution. But as they say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And nothing has changed about the denialist regime of the Turkish state. With millions spent each year to rewrite history books so children cannot learn the truth. The tentacles of the Turkish state's influence reach far and wide. In 2011, our very own Prime Minister, now Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, stood up in Parliament and said, "It is important that we recognise the Armenian Genocide for what it is." This week, the Prime Minister's position had changed. Suddenly, the Prime Minister was too afraid to repeat what he knows to be true, and instead, he tells us, "We have been working with the Turkish government to ensure that Australians make the pilgrimage to Gallipoli." Shame. Wow, what a statement by our leader. Not only has he backflipped on his position to recognise the Armenian Genocide, the Prime Minister has just admitted to caving in to pressure from a foreign dictator, not because there is insufficient evidence to support the recognition of the Armenian Genocide, but because of threats and fear-mongering by the Turkish state of today. No! Australian foreign policy will not be dictated to us. Australian foreign policy should be written by Australians who are elected by Australians and not by a foreign government. Prime Minister Morrison has slammed foreign interference in Australian politics in the past. Now he has succumbed to it. This is un-Australian, ladies and gentlemen. Do we want to be beholden to a foreign dictatorship where in the last 3 years alone, just 3 years, 150,348 people have been dismissed from their jobs? I say no. where 500,650 people have been investigated. No, where 96,885 people have been arrested, where 3,003 schools, dormitories and universities have been shut down. No, where 6,021 academics have lost their jobs, where 4,463 judges and prosecutors have been sacked. No, where 189 media outlets have been shut down and where 319 journalists have been arrested. No, that's right. This is not a dictatorship we want the Prime Minister of Australia to be beholden to. We call on Scott Morrison and Bill Shorten to stand by Australian values and to speak the truth of the Armenian Genocide. We call on the Australian Government to look to our own history, to acknowledge evidence provided by our very own Anzacs that clearly show the truth. We call on the Australian Government to recognise the Armenian Genocide and call on Turkey to do the same. Often I hear, the genocide was more than 100 years ago, who cares? I care. I care not just for the memory of those we lost, but for the memory of our future. I care because humanity is our most precious gift, and our ability to learn from the mistakes of our past is our best chance at not repeating them. In closing, I stand here today demanding justice. I stand here today filled with a hope for a prosperous Armenia and a compassionate Australia. I stand here today because 104 years ago, Turkey failed. Yes. And for that reason, I say, 1915, never again!